Well, welcome. I suppose we'll get started. It's you and me. Um, I'm Ann Dumeyer. I'm the Administrative Instructional Specialist here at REACH, and I manage our ELAC committee, and I'm running our EL program and LPAC testing in addition to SSTs, 504s, and the intervention program at REACH. Today's meeting is really just to talk about what the LPAC is and how to prepare for it. So we'll talk about that as we walk through our slideshow. And if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. There's just the two of us. So if there's anything that comes up, go ahead and speak up and let me know what you need.
I will, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. All right, so first we're going to talk about who takes the LPAC. We'll talk about testing and scores. Oh, look at that, somebody came. Excellent. I'll wait just a sec for her audio to connect. Thank you for your patience. Welcome, Miss Jean. I'm Ann Dumeyer. I'm the Administrative Instructional Specialist at REACH.
Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how about yourself?
Good, you're Fidelina's mom, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Well, welcome.
I was rushing home. I was like, I'm gonna make it.
Yay, thank you for coming. All right, well, we'll jump in. We were just on the table of contents page, so you're right on time. All right, so we're going to talk today about who takes the LPAC, the testing schedule and what the scores mean. We'll talk about how to prepare for the test and then resources for preparing at home.
Okay.
So who takes the LPAC? Great question. The LPAC is the English Language Proficiency Assessment for California. Students in kindergarten through grade 12 whose home language is not English are required by law to be assessed in an English language proficiency test using the LPAC assessment. This is the new replacement for CELT. So we used to use CELT testing years ago, and we've used LPAC, I think this is 4th or 5th year. The website's below if you guys want to check it out. There's lots of information from the California Department of Education. If I jump ahead to who's taking it. When kids are enrolled in school for the first time in the United States, whether that's for kindergarten or if they move in from another country, they'll fill out this home language survey. And then on the lines below, that indicates what languages are spoken first in the home with the student, what you use most frequently in the home that the child is hearing, and then what language do you use most frequently to speak to your child, and then the name of the language spoken most often by the adults in the home. And so that gives it kind of gives information about what languages they're hearing, what languages they've learned. Based on that, if there's any answer other than English, then they're assessed to be determined whether or not they're proficient in English so that we can provide English learning development as needed. And so once we have determined if they're an English language learner, then we move on to, yes, they're going to take the LPAC every year until they potentially test out. And so when we look at the testing, it's moved from paper pencil to online only. Kids in kinder through 2nd grade take the reading test and the listening test online, and they take the writing and the speaking test with an adult, either in small group or one-on-one. Speaking is all one-on-one. Kids in 3rd through 6th grade and all the way to 12th complete everything online except for the speaking test. The testing window opens up in February and closes in May, and our testing window at REACH is determined by, generally, we finish before they take their state assessments for the SBAC. So once we have the calendar for one, we set the calendar for the other, but it tends to be in like end of February, early March. There are 4 testing domains. I can move this over. Here we go. Can you guys see it okay? Students are assessed in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The listening and speaking portions are their oral language development, and then reading and writing would be for, not oral, verbal, and then academic language. So underneath that, we talk about the 4 scoring categories. So once they take their 4 domains, they're measured in 4 categories, kind of like on their report card. So we set up the report cards to mirror what the state test is using for both SBAC and LPAC, so that if someone scores a 1, it means they're just beginning to develop, that they're learning those skills. If they score a 2, it's somewhat developed. If they score a 3, it's moderately developed. And then if they score a 4, it's well developed. Questions? Testing and scoring? Yeah, everything's good. I forgot where to put this. So I put in a sample score sheet so we can kind of look at what they look like now. They should have come in the mail, and if you haven't received it, it's on its way. If your student took the LPAC in the spring, you'll be receiving your score sheet. The format has changed in the past few years when they decided to make it an online test. Hold on, I had a new person join us. There we go. I'll give her a minute to connect, and we'll go through scoring, and then at the end I'll loop back around to bring her back to the top. All right. Welcome, Miss Amaskita. Good morning. We're just going through scoring. I'll walk through scoring and we'll catch her up after. When you get your score sheet, the overall score indicates the overall for all 4 of the domains, the reading, writing, listening, and speaking domains. At the bottom, it explains the levels that we talked about for their performance, where it's level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. And those scaled scores underneath the levels are different by grade level, because they would need to be further developed the older they get. So it will say on your child's score sheet what the scaled scores need to be to fall into each of those ranges. And then on the second page, so it has your overall and then what the levels are. And then on the, there we go. On the second page, it'll indicate the oral language and the written language scores, where they have the oral language as listening and speaking, and then the written language is the reading and writing. Does that make sense? And then at the bottom of the page, on the second page, it will have a list of their LPAC score history so that you're aware of how they scored in years past and then how they're scoring now. So you can kind of see the growth and see how they're performing over time. Questions about the score sheets at all? No? Miss Amaskita, I know you popped in. I think we missed the first couple slides. At the end, I'll loop back around so I can catch you up, if that's okay. Since we've looked at the testing schedule and who takes it and what the score sheets indicate, we want to talk about how to prepare, how to make sure your kid's score goes up so that they can potentially test out as they get older. So when we're looking at the concepts that you want to review at home with your kiddo, first and foremost, read. As often as you're able to read with your kid, read. When they're reading, ask them to verbally summarize the story when they're done to see that they've understood what the story's about, just to test comprehension, and being able to restate what they've read in a way that makes sense, so that they would start at the beginning and tell the story in sequence to the end, and include the key details. Yes, go ahead.
Question: when we're doing the reading, do we want to be reading in the native tongue or in English?
Ooh, that's a good question. Any reading is good for comprehension. Reading in English is going to help us with English development, but developing comprehension skills either way is still going to be a benefit to your kid.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a good question. The next two, we do want to make sure they're working on specifically in English, but reading is beneficial all around the board. So the next two would be responding to prompts, which is you ask a question and they answer on the topic. And so in the LPAC test, there are a lot of times where they'll be given a situation and then asked a question. And they need to respond in a way that makes sense, whether it's sharing an opinion or summarizing something that they've been presented, like an oral story. So that's where the reading and responding comes in. So even being able to like read a menu as a family and have them share an opinion about why they want what they want, and having that answer be in a complete sentence that explains why. But practice staying on the topic. One of the things we notice is that sometimes if the content is harder, students have trouble staying on that topic. They want to discuss the idea, something related to it, instead of what the question was. So if we gave you a situation where you had to come up with an opinion and explain why you wanted something, and instead you told me how you had already done it a different time, it wouldn't answer the question. So just making sure that when you're asking questions, that they're answering the question you've asked and not like walking around the answer with ideas related, but not addressing the question. Does that make sense? And then using complete sentences. So I know, especially in the age of text messaging and kind of shortening what we write, kids are writing really short or saying really short answers, using even acronyms when they're speaking. So we want to encourage students to restate the question when they're asked a question and answer in a complete sentence. Like, what would you like for dinner? Oh, for dinner, I think I'd like to have, and then explain what they would want. Or if you guys go see a movie and you ask what it was about, what was your favorite part of the movie? My favorite part of the movie was, and then tell you what it was, not just the end, So getting them to express themselves in complete sentences in a way that addresses what you're asking. Questions there at all? All right, so preparing for the LPAC at school, we participate in English language development, which is a specific portion of the day where students are receiving special instruction. This year we purchased new curriculum specifically for ELD. So students will be using a new software. It's called Lexia English, and they'll be using that for 30 minutes a day, practicing English language development on the computer. And then they're also going to receive some small group instruction, either from intervention staff or their teacher. And that way we're kind of doubling up. In the past, we had kids grouped, if they were in ELD, with a teacher doing like a whole group instruction across grade levels. But with COVID, it's just not safe to put all the cohorts in one room. So we wanted to make sure we had a way with everyone on campus to still address their needs and receive specialized instruction to help them develop English skills. Questions about what we're working on at school? Generally, they do kind of the same skills we talked about for preparing at home, but they're working on it in conversation with other kids, being able to ask and answer questions with each other. Reading fluency, grammar, sentence structure. So let's talk about some resources that you can use at home. So when we're looking at supporting students performing on the Summit of LPAC at the end of the year, there's a specific number of scaffolds you can use when you're reading with your student. So when we're practicing reading, the next ones will be writing and speaking, don't worry. But we'll talk about reading first. So when you're reading with your student, you want to scaffold from the test, which means that you're kind of providing the steps to help them be successful, not giving them answers, but being able to support them. So if you have a student who's struggling to decode, giving them the sounds to blend it and not telling them the word right away. Or if a student is reading the words and choosing a picture to match, instead of having to independently read the whole story by themselves. Let's see. When they're reading and choosing a sentence, this is some of the stuff that's being tested, is being able to read sentences and then find the picture that matches what the sentences are about. So when you're reading stories at home, you could have them explain how the picture relates to what they've read. That makes sense. So when you're reading a picture book, you would have them read part of it. You could finish reading it if they're struggling, or help them blend it, and then explain how the picture relates back to what they've read. If they're reading informational text, being able to explain that main idea and the details is really important. So if you're reading a story about motorcycles, you'd want them to be able to tell you what was shared, what the facts were, and then what details supported those main facts. If you're reading an essay, So one of the things they'll have to do is read an essay presented as if a student had written it. So in upper grades, they're given an essay, like a student sample, and then they have to go in and answer questions about it, or write in what they would say next, right? Or how would they change it? How would they edit that writing? So being able to go in and look at where there might be mistakes in their writing, or how they would add to that writing. So that might even be so much as if they bring writing home from school, to talk with them about, hey, let's read it together. Tell me about what you wrote, and then what would you change next, or what details could you add? Or if someone else had written this, what kind of feedback would you give them? Just to be thinking about what they read and explain. Trying to think of where my brain went. So being able to explain like what they would add next, like what would come next, or what would they change to make it more accurate. When they're reading a literary passage, it's literally just passage and questions, just like a test from school. So when they're doing like a weekly ELA test, that is part of the test as well for ELAC or LPAC. And then the informational passage is the same. So there are some that are similar to what we do every week on weekly tests, but there are some questions that are really different, where they have to be able to read and respond to show that they understand the content and how it's written. In the writing domain, the kindergartners write labels for a picture, where they're either writing a letter, so they'll have like a picture of someone jumping or walking, and they have to be able to say the letter and write it at the like what do you hear at the beginning of the word, that kind of a thing. For the writing a story together, they collaborate with the test examiner to write together, where the student has to write the word independently. So they would be given the story, a word is missing, and they have to figure out what it is and write it. When they're writing about an experience in grades 1 through 12, they have to think of a time that was memorable for them in school, and then independently compose a paragraph about that topic. The hardest part as they get older is being able to stay on topic. For the younger kids, the issue tends to be the phonics. So working on the blending skills, working on their spelling skills, but then as they get older, it does tend to be a little more content-based, where they need to be able to like address the topic and provide meaningful details. When they're given academic information, they'll be presented with like a science experiment that someone does, and it's read aloud to them and it's written. So they're listening and watching a video, and then they write a response about what happened or how they did it, what are the steps. A fun way to practice that kind of skill at home might be if you guys do cooking together, having them, watch you do it and then write out what you did as if they were creating the recipe themselves. And I don't know if anybody does like YouTube tutorial kind of stuff, but that kind of practice is really fun, because then they're having to summarize what you did and reshare it in a way that someone else could use it. And teaching is a really powerful way for kids to comprehend what they've learned. So just having them watch you read the recipe and explain what you're doing and talk through it like you're doing a show, but then have them write it out and do their own tutorial about what you've done. That way they have to reprocess it and go through the steps in order. And just that following sequence is really powerful. There's another section where they'll be describing a picture, and they have to just tell what's happening when they're younger. And as they get older, they have to examine a paragraph written by a classmate and then be asked about what's happening in the picture. So there'll be a picture, there's a section that someone else has written, and then they're asked to respond about what would happen next, or what would be the next part of that task, and then add on to that person's writing. Questions about the writing domain? We're looking at the speaking domain. There's talk about a scene, grades K through 12. So student is presented with an illustration of a familiar scene, something that's common for everyone. And then the test examiner will ask them questions about the scene, and the student responds. Now that it's online, everything's presented through the computer. So they're watching a video, or they're listening to a story, and then they respond, and their voice is recorded, so that we can go back and check that we caught all the pieces and we're not missing anything. So they have to be able to describe what they see. They have to support an opinion. They'll be presented with either 2 activities or 2 events or 2 objects and asked what's better and why. And they have to be able to explain which one they would pick and then why they would select that. The older they get, the more choices, the more the choices become situationally complex. So the explanation would be a little more deep. For speech functions, it's for grades 2 through 12. Students state what they would say in a given situation. So a situation would be explained where, pretend you are this person, like this is happening to you. What would you say to your teacher if you needed to do X, like if you needed to borrow a pencil? What would you say to your classmate if you wanted to do something together? But they give you a situation and the students have to explain it. Retelling a narrative is speaking about pictures that they see. So there'll be a story they listen and then they retell what they hear, which is where that reading practice comes in really powerful. Being able to hear a story and retell what you hear. We look at presenting and discussing information. This is more factual and it's grades 6 through 12. So only our 6th graders participate in this part of the test where they're given graphs and charts and images that provide information and the student has to summarize and discuss that information. And then they are given an academic presentation that they need to summarize where it's generally informational text and the students have to be able to summarize the main points and then the key ideas with details. Questions about speaking domain? So at this website, it is a live link. I don't know if you guys can click it, but if not, I will ask to have it shared from Miss Staler in the office, or you can copy it down, or I could email it to you, whatever works for you. But all the practice tests open up generally late fall, and you can go on, they all have old questions there that you can practice with your student, and that way you kind of know what it looks like and you guys have a good understanding of what to expect. And that takes away some of the anxiety of test taking to know what's coming. I'll leave it up for a minute. Does anybody have questions about practicing at home? Good, got it? All right, so that's kind of the end of the mandatory presentation of things that must be presented. But I did want to pick your brains a little bit about cultural celebrations at Reach while you're here. So this past month, we've been celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, and it's ending soon, and the kids seem to really like it. They have a door decorating contest going on right now, and each classroom has been assigned a different country. There has been a list of music that was shared from staff where it's all either Hispanic or Latina or Latin music, and they're playing it every morning instead of our normal playlist. So the kids are outside like dancing and singing along and having a really good time. There have been art projects in the classrooms. I've seen posters coming out. So that's been really exciting. It's the first time we've celebrated the whole month at Reach. What are some other special events that we might be able to celebrate that we're not yet celebrating? Are there any things that come to mind? You're like, oh, you know what? We celebrate this that you could share at school. Not yet? No?
I struggle in this area. I don't know, even in my upbringing, I mean, the elementary I attended was created by a children's book author, and his main thing was literacy. So we didn't, there wasn't anything in specific of me and family wise. I mean, we're pretty blended, so there isn't anything that we've ever. I mean, we just, at least for me, our emphasis has always been food. So, that's about as much as we get cultural in my side. So we and when it comes to food, we kind of pinpoint where it comes from, like, and it'll be like almost like a Thanksgiving event kind of thing. We get down with the food and we just talk about it, like, hey, you got yuca, that's cassava, and you know who brought it, or like the beans, like, oh, you don't know how to season it because your mama's from so and so place, but great grandma brought it, and brought the sazon from elsewhere, and so that was my experience just growing up. Just I guess just the roots of our food. I don't know, but I know that for my husband, who is Mexican, Chinese, and Egyptian. I don't know, it's just an odd, funky mix. For them, it's really about like the dance and music and the arts. So that's where we just kind of talk about our differences and kind of come together. And I know that like today, my daughter Fidelina has shared about the door decoration, and she said, well, with Mr. Rodriguez, we were assigned Colombia, and I told her, well, did you know your great grandmother is actually living out there? And so she said, really? And I said, yeah, so we talked about like the main plate, which is the bandeja paisa, which is a big, big plate. And it has the arepa, which is like a tortilla but made with cheese. It has the chorizo. It has the fried egg. It has the rice. It's almost like a hybrid of like Caribbean with Filipino, just all meshed together. But a lot of our foods, at least, my father was raised in Costa Rica, but he's Afro-Honduran. And so it's a lot of just rice, beans, plantains. So it's just a lot of Caribbean hint to it.
That's incredible.
Well, we don't have anything that we celebrate. When I was in college, I know one thing that I came to knowledge of was, I guess, Dia del Niño. I don't really know much about it. I don't know if, our folks here might have further knowledge to help me out here, but I think it's also just celebrating children, like Day of the Kiddo. And from what I recall, UCR kind of made it also as a literacy thing, like let's do books kind of like we did Tuesday night at school. It's all about advancing the reading scores. Reading is magical.
Hey, oh,
So
that's great. Thank you. If I have questions, I will reach out.
I will pass the mic.
Yay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, if you come up with anything, feel free to reach out to me directly. My contact's here, A. Dumeier at reachroyals.org. I really appreciate you guys attending today. And if you need anything, feel free to reach out. We meet every other month. We're moving the times back and forth to see if we get more or different groups to try and include more people. So it'll go from like 8 o'clock and then 5 o'clock and then 8 o'clock and then 5 o'clock, just to try and make sure we can access everybody. But then we'll have the slides shared on the website so you guys can access it if you miss one. But I'm really glad you're here, and if you keep coming, the next few will start to be hopefully a little bigger, and we'll get some more fun going. I'd love to throw an event like they did with APAC at some point this year. That'd be really cool. But I want to make sure we have people on board to come and be involved and help and enjoy it with us.
Just a random hypothesis. Could it be that, when people see the acronym, the ELAC, or like APAC, you're just kind of like, what's this about? Or, one of two or maybe both. It may sound like it's only, what's the word, inclusive or no, exclusive to those who pertain to that group. I don't know, I like something that Miss Judy had said on Tuesday night. You know, she said, this is for everybody. It's not just for
Mm-hmm.
one group. And I think that that's really helpful for some folks, that may go like, oh, hold on, my kid speaks only English, so we don't need it. Well, my kid is an African American, so why should I support? When it's really just about helping everyone out, improve those scores. I feel like I'm just rambling. I'm really nervous.
Oh, it's okay. Me
But
too.
having a brief explanation.
Yeah. Okay. And I know the tough part is with APAC, it's not like mandated that they share specific information, but with ELAC, it is that we have to share like specific information about the program because it is a federally mandated program. So yeah, that was kind of where in the past year I've been brainstorming and tried to like, how do we think outside the box? Because there's a requirement that a specific number of participants have to be English learners. And so
Okay.
how do we make sure that we bring in enough people, but not so many that it sets off our numbers? I don't know. So I want to bring lots of people and then we can, figure out a way to make it engaging to celebrate cultures at Reach and make sure that everybody's voice is heard and that our students are supported, and still be sharing what we have to share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
it's a
know.
toughie.
Yeah, it's hard, having parent involvement, especially because of the time differences, work schedules and then all of that. Uh, so I don't know, maybe just like having like, um, yikes. I mean, I wouldn't want to piggyback right in with like extra credit. But maybe if we have like a certain numbers raised per classroom, kind of make it like a competition, we could kind of rev up those numbers and parents to come on in. I know getting the school situated on a weekend, it would be a hit or miss because then it's the weekend and you know um but yeah, during the week, maybe like I know Dr. Renty used to do the coffee with the director, or even the school council meetings, like either in the morning or the PM. And sometimes there were surveys, like which one would you most likely attend. So maybe doing some of those can also further assist accessibility.
That's a great idea. Yes, I will send out a survey to see what time works better for everybody. That's a good idea. Um, and then, like you said, the explanation so people know like what the acronym means and who's included and what's it about. Because it does seem kind of cut and dry. Like, come to this meeting. Why?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you
I
for your
know for like
feedback.
the council ones where it says like, and we're going to be going over the minutes. I'm like, is that for everybody? Is that, so there we go.
Yay. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys attending. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add before we close up?
Sorry, yes, I have two questions. I was frozen earlier, couldn't unmute.
Oh, sure.
So I have two questions. The first one is, do you recommend any books for the kids to read that would improve their reading skills and understanding? And my second question is about the Hispanic Heritage Month celebration. The kids get to dress up on October 20. So for non-Hispanic families, do you recommend that they could use any type of clothing from their closet to kind of make it look Hispanic-y?
Yeah, that's what I'll be doing is kind of faking it that day. But there will be some celebrations throughout the year that will be rolling out so that we're hopefully able to celebrate all of many of the cultures that are represented at Reach. So yes, I would say get in the closet and be creative for that day. And then if there's something that you would like to celebrate so that your kids have something they want to share, we'd love to make sure that they feel included and we celebrate that as a school with them.
Okay.
As far
That's
as
cool.
yay, good. And then for recommended books, any book is going to be great. I would say it depends on student interest, really. That's the biggest kind of determining factor in making sure that they want to read, is that they're reading something that's interesting to them. So, and that it's something they can do independently. In your student's progress report, the teacher sent home a diagnostic score that had at the bottom a ZPD level. And it would say kind of what grade level books are appropriate that your kid can read all by themselves. Usually it's about a year span where it'll say like, 1.7 to 2.6, which just means the end of first grade to the beginning of second grade. And then there are websites that you can look at, but the one I like is bookfinder.com. And you can go in and enter their score, and it'll give you a list of all the books at your student's level. And then you can talk with them about, what kind of books do you like? Are you into mysteries? Are you into adventure? Are you into science fiction? Do you like nonfiction books about science? Do you like narrative picture books? Like, what are they into? Right now, my daughter's really into Berenstain Bears. Great. So we have a stack of them, and we can sit and read that as much as we want. And then here's all the other books you can pick from when you're tired of that. But just having, choices that are things they want to read. And then when you get to the end of the book, just talking together, like, so who was in the story? Who were the characters? Can you tell me about, where did it take place? What was the problem? What was the solution? How did they solve it? Just kind of talking about the story after, so that they're having to explain it in a complete sentence, is really powerful. You can have them summarize it. You could have them do something like, if you watched Reading Rainbow, back when that was a thing, where they have to do like a book review and share why they would want someone else to read it, give their opinion about the book. That's really powerful. But really, there's no wrong way to read. If you're reading, it's going to benefit your kids. So any book that they're interested in that they can read by themselves is awesome. If it's somebody who's struggling with reading aloud to your child is still powerful. So having them follow along while you read can be really helpful too, as long as they're sharing back that they understand what you read. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So the website that is great is bookfinder.com if you want the list for all of your on-level books for your kiddos. Is there anything else I can help with? No? Thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate your time. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.